All right, let's get right into it. We're going to deconstruct one of the most critical scenes in all of Romeo and Juliet. This is Act 4, Scene 1, and believe me, this is the exact moment the story shifts gears from a forbidden love story into a full-on ticking clock thriller. This is where the desperate plan is born, a plan so risky it can only end in a miracle or a complete and utter disaster.
And this is where Juliet is at emotionally when the scene really gets going. As soon as she has a moment alone with Friar Lawrence, this is what comes out. It's just this raw cry of absolute despair. This isn't just sadness, it's the feeling of being totally, completely trapped. These three short phrases, they set this terrifying tone for everything that's about to happen.
So what's got her feeling so hopeless? Well, the scene actually opens before Juliet even gets there, and we find out the problem is already in full swing. A wedding is being planned, and it's happening at, like, lightning speed. The pressure cooker is on.
Now, what's so fascinating here is why everyone's in such a hurry. I mean, look at this. Everybody has a totally different angle. Paris is explaining to the friar that Lord Capulet is pushing for this marriage to, and I quote, stop the inundation of her tears. They think she's just endlessly weeping for her cousin Tybalt. They think a wedding will just, snap her out of it. Of course, the friar, and we the audience, we know what's really going on. And you can see it in that last row. The friar's not on board. He calls the whole thing uneven, which is just a very polite friar-like way of saying this is a terrible, reckless idea.
So here's the bottom line. Juliet is being backed into a corner hard. She's supposed to marry Paris on Thursday. That gives her less than 48 hours to figure a way out of this or defy her family, a family who has already threatened to throw her out on the street. That clock is ticking, and it is loud.
And right then, Juliet walks in. What happens next is one of the most masterful, high-tension conversations Shakespeare ever wrote. She has to talk to Paris, this guy she absolutely does not want to marry, right in front of the friar. And every single word she says is a verbal tightrope walk.
Just look at this exchange. It's incredible. Paris, trying to be all smooth, basically tells her, "Go on, tell the friar you love me." And Juliet, without missing a beat, says, "I will confess to you that I love him." Now, Paris thinks she's talking about the friar, or maybe just being coy about him, but no, she is literally confessing her love for Romeo, right to Paris's face. It's an amazing piece of verbal judo.
And you can see her strategy right here. When Paris calls her his wife, she shoots back with, "That may be, sir, when I may be a wife." It's a tiny little correction that he just completely misses. She's literally fighting for her life using language. And the dramatic irony here, it is just off the charts. The gap between what she's saying, what Paris thinks she's saying, and what we know she means is huge. The poor guy has no clue.
The second Paris is out the door, that polite mask just shatters. All the clever wordplay is gone, and we see the raw, terrified teenager underneath. And this is where the scene just explodes. She doesn't just talk about suicide, she pulls out a knife. This is not some empty threat. She tells the friar flat out, "If you don't have a solution for me, this knife does." And when she says, "This shall slay them both," she means her hand and her heart, both of which belong to Romeo. She would rather die than betray him.
And that's the choice she gives him. It's that simple. There's no middle ground. There's no let's think about it. Find a way out, a remedy right now, or she will end her life right there on the floor of his cell. The stakes honestly could not be higher. So, with his back against the wall, pushed there by Juliet's ultimatum, the friar comes up with a plan. But let's be clear, this is not a safe plan. It is a wild, desperate gamble that is every bit as extreme as Juliet's threat.
I love this line because the friar basically admits how crazy his idea is. He says the solution has to be as desperate as the thing they're trying to prevent, which is her death. He sees her willingness to die not as the problem, but as proof that she's got the nerve to pull this off. And here we see the friar isn't just a wise old mentor, he's also kind of a flawed guy, right? He's choosing deception and risk, maybe getting in way over his head, all because he's been backed into a corner himself.
But does she have the nerve? He tests her. And Juliet just immediately fires back a list of horrible things she would absolutely rather do than marry Paris. First on the list? Yeah, she'd rather leap from a tower.
And she's not done. She keeps going, just to prove her point. She says she'd rather hang out with thieves or, be locked in a room full of snakes. At this point, it's clear she fears nothing more than being unfaithful to Romeo.
And finally, we get this incredibly gothic image. She says she would rather be locked away in a charnel house, a tomb basically, surrounded by old bones and skulls, than marry Paris. Her point has been made loud and clear. She is fearless. She will do anything.
So the friar lays out the whole thing. And as you can see, it's a 4-step plan where every single link in the chain has to hold perfectly. Step 1, she has to go home and pretend to be this happy, obedient daughter. If anyone gets suspicious, the whole thing's off. Step 2, she has to drink this mysterious potion all alone and just trust that it only makes her look dead. Step 3, this whole thing relies on her family finding her and, without question, putting her in the family tomb. And then there's Step 4, the most fragile piece of all. Romeo has to get that letter from the friar. The whole plan just hangs by a thread.
And here it is. The one detail that might be the most important part of this whole plan. The potion will make her look dead for exactly 42 hours. Not a minute more, not a minute less. The entire rescue, all of it, depends on Romeo getting the message and getting to that tomb inside this incredibly specific time window. It is a very, very fragile house of cards.
So, after hearing this terrifying, complicated, and unbelievably risky plan, how does Juliet react? Does she hesitate? Ask for some time to think it over?
Nope, not even for a second. Her response is instant. Gimme, gimme! She practically snatches the vial out of his hand. She tells him, don't you even talk to me about fear. In this moment, she takes total control of her own fate. And in doing so, she kicks off the final, tragic act of the play.
And so this is where we're left. A plan built on lies, a powerful sleeping potion, a very precise timeline, and a single letter that absolutely positively has to get to where it's going. It's a desperate solution to a desperate problem, and it leads us with the one question that hangs over the entire rest of the play. What could possibly go wrong?